question. I noticed that there are a lot of people that are still asking, what about October 7th? I noticed that there's still a lot of pro-Israeli agitators harassing, beating up on, tormenting, and traumatizing young college students, peacefully protesting college students, and you're harassing them and asking them, well, what about October 7th? You know what? And I get it every once in a while myself. What about October 7th? Why don't you? I'm Team Humanity. I thought I made that clear from day one. But I do want to address you pro-Israeli people, because I think what about October 7th is a good question. It's a good question. So here's what you should be doing, though, with that question. I think your question is misguided, meaning it should be directed at another entity, another group, namely the IDF and Netanyahu. But here's what you should be asking. Here's specifically what you should be asking about October 7th. You should be asking why it took 8+ hours for the IDF and Netanyahu to respond on October 7th. There were reports of some people like hiding in ditches and woods and brush for 12 hours, 15 hours, up to 20 hours. Where was the law enforcement's response? Where was the IDF's response? Where was Netanyahu's response? And I want you to keep in mind, when you ask this question, they were all warned a year in advance about the chatter about Hamas's plans to attack, to invade Israel. So they were forewarned for an entire year, right? They did not take the warning seriously. That's another question for you. Why didn't they take it seriously? And then when it happens, the lag in their response time, 8+ hours, and you care so much about these Israeli people, but you can't show up to try to protect them for 8+ hours? See, these are the questions you should be asking, you pro-Israeli agitator people that's out here in the streets. These are the questions you should be asking. You should be asking Netanyahu why for years he was funding Hamas, sending suitcases of cash to Hamas. He only stopped this practice when there was a guy who got onto the their version of a cabinet and brought to his attention, hey, we shouldn't be giving them cash. But the money didn't stop. They just stopped giving it to them in cash. So literally, Netanyahu has been funding Hamas for years. That's another question you should be asking, you pro-Israeli agitators. You should also be asking, how many hostages, Netanyahu and IDF, have you specifically and by yourself recovered? How many have you rescued? Because to my knowledge, there have been none. That this military, this army that claims to be so sophisticated and advanced, they haven't recovered any on their own. What's up with that? That's another question you should be asking. You should be asking also, you say that you have killed some of the leaders of Hamas. Where's the proof? Where's the verification of that? We've seen you blow a lot of things up, but we haven't been provided any proof that you have actually taken out any of these Hamas leaders that you claim to. There's another question you should be asking. You should also be asking, why did you sign, Netanyahu, why did you sign all these lease agreements and contracts with these companies to drill for oil back in July of 2023, right before Hamas invaded Israel, right before October 7th? You should be asking, why did you do that? What's this oil exploration about? Is that your motivation? Could that possibly be your motivation? Because those contracts, several companies, were signed in July of 2023. And since we're talking about money, just recently, Netanyahu started talking about building settlements in the destroyed Gaza area. Let's just wipe it all clean and let's build some settlements here. So again, that comes back to money. And lastly, the thing that you should be asking about, last thing you should be asking Netanyahu, IDF, all these people in Israel that you are so proudly standing up for, to the point that you're going to beat up other Americans for. You should be asking Netanyahu, what's going to happen to you if this war ended? Well, so-called war. It's a massacre. Let's get it straight. It's a massacre and it's a slaughter. You got to have two people with militaries if you want to have a war. And that's not what this is. Innocent babies, thousands upon thousands of innocent babies, children, women are being killed, slaughtered, murdered. So this is not a war. But what you should be asking Netanyahu is, what happens to you when this ends? Will you be held accountable for things that you have been, have been alleged that you have done, that you are alleged that you are guilty of? Will you lose your position in government? Is that in jeopardy? What does it mean to you, Netanyahu, to stay in this conflict, to continue to massacre Palestinian people? See, these are the questions you should be asking, you pro-Israeli agitators, while you're out here preying on and attacking young college students who are just trying to stand up for humanity. They are trying to be a voice for all these abandoned, maimed, murdered, slaughtered, disfigured, dismembered babies, children, women, men in Gaza. They're just trying to be a voice. They're just trying to stand in the gaps. They're just trying to make some demands. But the real questions about October 7th, you are misguided and you should direct them elsewhere, because the only person who has the answers that you need about October 7th are Netanyahu, the IDF, and all the law enforcement over there in Israel. These college students, they don't have nothing to do with that. Nothing.